Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Neil Foley, and I'm the applications engineer here at Rise. So today I'm going to be talking about service bureaus and what Rise can do to add benefits to what service bureaus are capable of. So first, I'd like to talk about some of the things that challenge service bureaus, some of the things that service bureaus need to pay attention to and address for their business model to work for them. So of course, for any business, one of the main things that you need in order to stay afloat is to make sure that you are bringing in enough revenue and profit. And for service bureaus, this is a particularly important point because of the way that their use of 3D printers is so directly tied to their ability to market and deliver parts to their customers. So another important point for service bureaus is making sure that they're able to expand their markets and offerings. There's a limited amount of any market that is available for service bureaus or other manufacturers to deliver the parts to, and it's important for service bureaus to stay on the front edge of the technology so that as new requirements appear, they're able to take a portion of the market and not fall behind their competitors. Another important point, which ties closely into the last, is being able to differentiate among different sorts of technologies and materials. So for many service bureaus, one of the ways that they can most effectively gain market share and increase their profits is by offering things that competitors aren't, or being able to accomplish things with their set of technologies that is unique to them. So this could include offering a different or more diverse set of materials, or it could be the ability to do different types of things with the parts and be able to address a wider array of applications. Another important thing for service bureaus is because they are receiving orders for parts that often need to be completed and shipped within the course of a few days, being able to achieve a very fast part turnaround and delivery can be quite important. So this makes it paramount that each step of the process, from processing files to printing parts to post-processing parts, each of these needs to be very well streamlined so that there aren't any bottlenecks that prevent service bureaus from reaching the deadlines and the turnaround times that they're aiming for. And finally, in many cases, service bureaus need to achieve a high amount of throughput. They need to be able to produce a lot of parts on their machines for the businesses that they're serving. And one of the important things about that is that they can't have machines that are unreliable and shutting down or failing to produce parts properly. They need machines that are going to work through the night for them and always produce the parts that they intend. So now we'll give a quick overview of what Rise is capable of and some of the things that it offers to not only service bureaus, but all of our customers. We have a few technologies that we are currently developing. Two of those main technologies that will be released during this year are carbon fiber infused filament and also a new machine called the X-Rise, which is capable of producing full color parts. So some of the other things that we offer that differentiate us from some competition is the speed and simplicity of our full process. We have highly automated proprietary software that very much streamlines the pre-processing step of preparing parts. And we also have a very simple user interface on our machine that allows very little training to be required before user is capable of getting the most out of the machine. We also have the ability to make support removal very quick so that you don't need to spend a lot of time working on the parts after they've finished printing. Another point that separates Rise is the strength of our material. Our material called Rysium 1 fuses very well from one layer to the next, and this makes it very strong in the z-axis, and it seldom delaminates between layers. We also have the capability to apply digital marking to parts. We have the ability to apply QR codes, which can connect parts to a digital location, and that can be useful for all sorts of things, which I'll discuss. And finally, technology is essentially about is that between each layer of extruded thermoplastic, we are able to jet different functional inks using the type of print head that you would find in a 2D printer. And depending on the type of ink that we use in these print heads, we're able to achieve all sorts of different effects. So the way it typically works is that we'll begin by extruding the support structure on which the part will be built. Above the support structure, we jet what we call a release ink, and that makes it easy to separate the support from the model structure above it. Then we will extrude the model structure, again in thermoplastic filament, and then finally between layers of extruded thermoplastic, we're able to jet functional inks such as marking ink, which allows us to color parts with the different marking inks that are installed into that printer. So some of the things you're able to achieve with this marking ink include you can apply part numbers, versions, dates, and customer info, and this allows you to keep track of the different types of parts that you're producing and the different customers that you are producing them for without as much of the trouble that you might have when producing a very large number of parts and needing to sort through them and keep track of them. There's also the ability to apply what you see on the middle and the right here, a QR code. And QR codes, if you're unfamiliar with them, are able to store essentially any amount of digital information. A basic QR code will just store a small amount of text, but by connecting a QR code to a URL, you're able to link it to virtually any amount of data that is attached to a web page. So using that technology, you can provide very detailed information that is attached directly to the part and can't be removed. So now I'll discuss a bit more about our material. It has several factors that differentiate it quite a bit from similar technologies. We call it a high-end engineering compound. It is produced entirely with ingredients that are medical grade. It is very safe for skin contact, food contact. It doesn't produce any harmful chemicals, as I mentioned, as it's printing. The reason for that is that whereas most thermoplastic filaments will decompose or slightly burn at the temperatures at which they're extruded, we are able to extrude Rysium 1 at a much lower temperature than its decomposition temperature. And because of this, it doesn't decompose into any harmful chemicals. And so you don't need to vent it or have any special equipment for preventing the harmful chemicals that are emitted by other thermoplastics. You can have it in a small enclosed space and it will be perfectly safe. Some of the other valuable features are that it has essentially negligible moisture absorption. It's less than 1% that of ABS. So ABS absorbs moisture at a rate of 1%. Ryzium 1 absorbs it at only 1% of that amount. One moment. So here are some of the values regarding its safety features. As I mentioned, it produces 0 VOCs as it prints. It is made entirely with medical grade ingredients. It is skin and food contact safe. And one thing that I didn't mention is that after printing this material, it's perfectly safe to put it into a recycle bin, and it can be processed using the normal recycling processes. In 2018, it won an award for best practices in technology innovation in the zero emission polymer material additive manufacturing industry from Frost & Sullivan. And that was based on the set of safety features that are listed here. So some of the things about our process that make it quite valuable, particularly for reducing the turnover rate or the amount of time it takes to get a working part into the hands of a customer, are, as I mentioned, minimal pre and post processing. Our software that slices the parts and prepares them for printing is highly automated. We've done a lot of work to make sure that you don't need to be an expert in the software or even in FDM printing in order to get a successful print from this software. Also, once the part finishes, you can typically post-process the part by removing the supports, and this will take anywhere from a few minutes down to even a few seconds. This is because the release ink that we jet between support and model structures is a sort of lubricant that allows you to peel away the supports, often by hand. So some other things are that there is very little material management required for the printer. There's very little maintenance that you need to do. You essentially just need to insert the material cartridges, and they'll take care of what they need to until they need to be replaced. And finally, because you can remove supports primarily by hand, otherwise by pliers and other simple tools, you don't have to go through the soaking, washing, drying, cleaning, or coating processes that are required by some other 3D printing technologies. Because of this, you're able to produce parts very quickly and meet very short turnover times that you may not have been able to with other technologies. So here are some of the common applications that have been met by Ryzium parts. There is functional prototyping. Because we are a FFF machine, a thermoplastic extrusion machine with a very high Z strength, we're able to produce functional parts that can be used in all sorts of industrial applications. We also have the ability to produce parts in full color, and this allows for not only design prototypes, but functional design prototypes that can be handled, passed around, or even used in industrial applications and maintain both their structural integrity and the quality of their surfaces. We also have produced parts for tooling and manufacturing and service parts, which is, of course, the focus of service bureaus, producing parts for end use by their customers. So in particular, I'd now like to talk about the technology that we are developing for release later this year, the XRyze. So our first printer, the Ryze 1, is capable of printing with one color of marking ink. That's the blue that you can see on the QR code at the top. Our XRyze is going to be capable of printing with the full spectrum of marking ink colors, and this allows you to achieve all sorts of useful effects. So this can be useful in engineering capacities for visualizing the stresses or displacements of simulated models It can be useful for geography, geology, and architecture for producing scale models of either architectural buildings or geological areas, and that is useful for surveying and other things like that. This technology can be useful for life sciences, and the parts that it produces will be strong enough that they can be passed around and handled, and they will maintain their durability. And finally, it can be used for product design, which is useful, of course, for any sort of packaging company or a company that requires the use of packaging for their products. So some of the other things mentioned here include the ability to not only print in full color, but you can print all sorts of different types of things using our built-in software capabilities. Our software allows you to apply images or text to the parts in the software. So you can apply logos, QR codes as mentioned, text, and pretty much anything else that you can think of. So many of our companies, many of the customers that we've worked with have found that they can actually achieve an ROI on their printer in under 4 months. So it's quite an affordable purchase compared to how much value it can offer over a very short amount of time. So now I'd like to talk about one example of a customer of Rise's that has served as a service bureau and been very successful at that. So this is Azoth, which is a tool crib company. They provide services to particularly industrial manufacturers in the automobile industry, and they provide, using the Rise, the service of providing replacement parts and tooling and other fixtures, jigs, things like that. And what they're able to do is deliver the parts that are requested by their customers much faster than they were able to when they were meeting the needs using traditional manufacturing. And so they've not only benefited from the speed of 3D printing with Rise, they've also benefited from some of the other effects that I've discussed here, the safety of it and the ability to apply marking ink. So here is a bit more of a detailed view of some of the things that are offered by Rise. The competitive differentiation and increased utilization and flexibility that is required by service bureaus is offered by Rise in the sense that our functional, full color, and carbon composite parts are able to be printed on the same platform. So with a single printer, you're able to gain quite a bit of flexibility in what you're able to 3D print. Regarding the service bureau's need to deliver parts faster, we are able to deliver parts very quickly because of how easy and quick it is to remove support and how simple it is to use the machines. We are able to produce very high quality parts because of various factors of our process, including our heated build chamber and the material properties of our different Risium materials. We are able to offer traceability and use as a sales or marketing tool because of the marking ink offered by both of our printers that can print text, images, QR codes, etc. And this can be quite useful to service bureaus for either tracking or authenticating parts that they've created for customers. We offer ease of use and installation, as well as low cost of ownership, which is important to service bureaus, both in the sense of needing to increase their profits while expanding the number of things they can do, expanding the flexibility of their technologies. And one of the benefits of Rise is that you can expand the use of your technology and anyone will be able to quickly learn how to use it. They don't need to be an expert in it in order to figure out the basics. And finally, we have several safety features of both our machine and our material that make it quite easily quite easy to implement into your lineup. You don't need to go through a lot of processes to prepare your lab or make sure that the way that you're using the machine is safe. So just as a quick summary, the X-Rise machine is able to produce both color and carbon parts, which is useful for service bureaus because it greatly expands the flexibility of what they can offer with just a single machine. It is able to produce usable parts very quickly because of how little post-processing is required, how quickly the parts can be post-processed. These parts are very functional. It is a strong material used in these machines that is strong, especially in the Z-axis compared to similar thermoplastic extrusion technologies. And it is also capable of incorporating digital authentication and traceability using Mark Inc. And this makes parts intelligent, where each part is able to be linked to its digital identity. And finally, it is an affordable machine because all of these components are able to produce a very fast ROI for those who use it effectively. So the last thing I wanted to mention is that there is an inclusive offer of SolidWorks Standard and Rise 3D printers going on now, where each purchase of a Rise 3D printer will include one commercial license of SolidWorks design software. So that's all I have for you for this webinar. I'm going to stick around for a few minutes if anyone has questions. So you can type any questions you may have into the chat window at the bottom of the GoToMeeting panel, and I will be staying here for a few minutes to answer them. Other than that, thank you all again for joining us, and I hope all of you have a nice day.